happy Valentine's Day to everybody. Thanks for coming on. Oh no, we have two Kellys. Kelly with an I. I saw you pop up first. How you doing today?
I am good. How are you?
Oh, one
Could,
second.
could you hear me?
Now I can hear you. Okay. Sometimes my computer doesn't like to it gets screwy with this bone mic. So no, I'm doing good. No, thank you guys for coming on today. So I don't have like strict agendas for like co-living Zooms. I just like to have conversations. So this is the, I believe, fifth time I've held this. I try to keep it to every other week. I've gone over overviews, I've gone over property selection, I've gone over tenant selection, property management, and all that. So, you know, whatever you guys want to talk about. I know that there's people out there who are coming on that have properties that they manage themselves. They have pad split manage. They have property managers. So like, I'll just kick it off. What I'm doing is, co-living, I kind of just fell into because nothing else would cash flow in my primary market of Colorado Springs. I'm trying to give affordable housing in the area and nothing was penciling. So I fell into just regular rent by the room type of property management. I found great community of co-living property managers. Grant Shipman, he runs a little community up in Denver and just kind of learning through those guys. I'm working on acquiring my third co-living property. I have five, two of which are non um, co-living. They're just regular long-term rentals, and I'm actually looking at switching those over as soon as the tenants move out. But yeah, I just do things regular, long-term, rent by the room, pad split. I couldn't get to work with the properties I had available, but what are you guys working on? Somebody want to tell us a little about yourself? Kelly Z.
I'm just curious, because it sounds like your market might be similar to mine. I'm up
Hmm.
near Sedona, Arizona, so it's very touristy, and there is a huge problem with affordable housing for the workers here. We actually
Mm.
own a small local business in the area, and we've been wanting to get into co-living just to support our local community. But I'm also interested in buying down in the Phoenix market as well. But I was not concerned, but I was curious how it worked if you're not using a platform like PadSplit like that. Are property management companies familiar with the rent by room model, and are they accommodating that? Or sort of having to educate them?
Yeah, I do everything myself, all of my own property management.
Oh, okay. So you're not using a property management company. Okay. Yeah,
No, go ahead.
we could do that being here local, manage it ourselves.
Yeah, and I started off trying to do short-term rentals. It worked for like half the year in the Front Range of Colorado, and then once the winter came, it just died, and I was like, yeah, that didn't feel very good. I was kind of floating around, thought I was going to be a wholesaler when I first got into the sub two community, and then I kind of, went to Squat Up Summit, and that's when I uh, determined through talking with a lot of other very successful individuals, like I have to be a buyer and all that other stuff. And I found that as I acquired these long-term rentals, I couldn't find a property management company that I was really happy with. And my sister has a
Yeah,
couple of management companies as well, and I help her manage her own properties now too, just because it's like, man, I'm managing the property managers, and that's not why I hired them. That's not why I'm giving
totally.
them 10 to, if you're short-term rental, up to 20% of gross
Hmm.
take. And it's like, man, that's not really good. So,
So then I know
go
like
ahead.
with the co-living model, they're really careful to refer to people that are renting a room as members versus tenants, just for the tenant laws and stuff. So how do you manage that? And is there a different type of contract that you're using?
So I use a straight Colorado residential lease
Okay,
with verbiage for rent by the room in there.
okay,
Um, the next step is definitely to hire a lawyer for a bulletproof lease, just because of all the
right,
laws that are coming up.
right.
But when it comes to like the membership thing, that is a pad split um
Yeah,
like way of doing it. And that
right.
is specifically like it's deliberate because when you
Yeah.
license something out, you can revoke that license to do whatever it is you like. Like you could have somebody, I don't know, use your backyard for a birthday. You can license them to do that. And by using the correct verbiage and not treating them as owning your backyard in the case of, tenants technically have, I forget the legal jargon for it, but like they have a reason to be there and they have a protected status to be there and to live there, even though it's your property. So the
Hmm.
membership, saying it's week by week, saying you have a license to be there, like all of that is very deliberate.
Hmm.
And that's their model. And that is in order to ensure that you can kick people out and they can leave, week to week.
Hmm.
Same thing with mine, it's month to month on 30-day renewing leases. And that is to afford the same thing. Where if it's just not working out with the other people in the house, they can leave. Because a lot of people
Okay.
will say one thing and then they come back and like, well, I need to break my lease. And it's
Hmm.
just easier, I find. But I call them residents because um, I'm not trying to shy away from interaction. I'm not trying to shy away from almost having that like owner mentality of the house. It's just I'm trying to create a household of
Hmm.
strangers by almost forcing them to interact with one another. There's rules that are very strict, no drinking
Hmm.
in common areas. Everybody has chores. Every week, there's one person who resets the chore board and then it slides down. It's this whole contraption that unfortunately I don't have with me. And so it's really causing interaction, but built into that interaction, there will be conflict. And so inside of the documents that they sign is also conflict resolution steps that they need to abide by, a household covenant. And that the house rules, again, are strict, but I like to have a beer or a glass of wine with my dinner. So I would go to the other people in the house and have that conversation, be like, hey, can we change this rule? And the lease is the lease. They sign it with me as the owner. Those laws are immutable for the household. But these house rules, I set them up so that it's about respect, it's about personal space, and it's about responsibility. But they can change depending on who actually occupies the house
Right.
together.
That makes sense. So they would all agree. So
Yeah,
you give them sort of a foundation to work off of, and then they can adapt it.
correct. Just like a family,
Hmm.
living together, there's rules that are, I guess, imputed into that family just by being, a family, and the household rules are set by the adults and the children are taught the household rules. Same thing here, where you are setting it up as the property manager and you are treating them like a family unit, a household. And,
Yeah.
it's calling them residents as opposed to tenants. Um, having once a new person comes in, that week you hold a potluck or something. You just like hold something, or um, whenever the house was first, you could call it founded. There can be a birthday for the house. You send over a cake, a larger cake, so that it's not just one person sharing their birthday. You can send over a larger cake with the implication to share with everybody else in the household. And then I afford everything in the common rooms. That's the living room, the kitchen, the pots and pans are mine, the couches are mine. I even buy the toilet paper and paper towels. So that's less conflict. Like, oh, you're using more my toilet paper, or you scratch my pots and pans. No, that's one less thing that they don't have to worry about. And so that they can concentrate on the things that matter. And frankly, people are lonely. We're the most connected we've ever been in history. And People, they can't even talk to somebody next to them on a bus or at the park. So I find creating that little community very important. Mm. Did I answer your question?
Mhm. Yeah,
Okay,
thank you.
perfect. Um, yeah, I mean we're having a conversation. So if anybody has any things that they work on, I know a lot of people use pad split. Um, I from my understanding, and I think I was actually talking to you, Bill. Was I talking to you about pad split and how they're changing? Man, I've had so many conversations in the space. Go ahead, Bill.
I don't quite remember if it was the conversation we had had about pad split changing. I know that they're in Denver currently, and
Mhm.
they have been changing their model a little bit so that they can make more money on the front end and the complications that entails for the investor.
Let me see who's all on. You know, um, First of all, don't hit your head too many times because then you have TBIs and you forget exactly who you're talking to and when you talk to them. It was James Brown. He's also in the community. He's up in Denver and he is a partner with Pad Split. And he's saying, while yeah, it's like the first 10 days they're taking on anybody who signs on with like a reoccurring fee. They are kind of dialing back on the no common spaces whatsoever. Um, because that was the thing was, hey, in order to reduce conflict, we're just going to have it where people just don't bump into each other type of situation. But yeah, I know pad split, they're dialing back a little bit on that. Now having that living room space to just chill out, I guess that could be okay. But I again, the people that I like to help are those single mothers, domestic violence survivors, struggling families, um, veterans. Bill, we've been talking about that a lot recently, and then young professionals. And like these are sectors of society that need other people. They've been cut off, they've undergone trauma, and it's all really about like what sector of society that you want to actually serve. And I know some people look at co-living and it's just like, man, the returns are amazing. And they are. They're very amazing. But um I don't know what's everybody like focusing on. I know Bill, you're trying to focus on the veteran population. Um and I've been seeing a lot of posts from you.
Yeah, I would agree with the idea that like the dichotomy of common spaces do increase conflict. However, common spaces also highly increase community. And I really like what you have done is you give them a way to facilitate the conflict resolution. And from my experience, I've helped probably 4 investors open sober living homes. And absolutely, if there is no common space, that is not happening. No way. Because, like John, you said, these people, they spend, if they're a marginalized group, they spend their life totally separate from other folks. And the way they're going to succeed is by bringing them together, helping them with shared experiences, shared trauma, and that creates bonds. That creates the cohesiveness throughout the house that not only gives you longer tenants, but they're happier.
Hmm. And when you say,
Love
so
that. I agree.
go ahead.
I was just gonna say I love that. I definitely agree. I think it's so important to build community and connection with people.
Yeah. And it I think it's kind of cliche, and I listen to a lot of the Get Creative podcast stuff. Like a lot of people thank Sub 2 for, creating a community of investors. And I think if we can get beyond the like money aspect, the beyond like just the wealth, there is tons of good. Like Bill, you just said that you've helped 4 other investors open sober living homes. And last time I talked to Oxford House, they like to have 6 to 8 beds per sober living home. So right there, you just helped what? Oh, upwards of 32 individuals find bed space that they otherwise couldn't have done that. And how are you working on sober living homes? What are you what's your niche in that space helping people?
So I've been in recovery for like 8 or 9 years, 8 years, something like that. And when I first got into recovery, the thing I first noticed was like, there was people, hey, do you need a place to live? Do you need a place to live? And I was like, I don't. But I soon realized that they were creating a community of success, helping people that had less time in recovery, and they were also getting their mortgages paid. And I was like, ooh, that is really neat. And that
Mm,
stuck with me for years until I got into sub two. And it was like, well, I do need to make money, but also what can I do to help people that are less fortunate than I was, right? I had a place to stay. And that's when I started reaching out to as many recovery operators as I could. And the one that I got stuck with, because they're the biggest, they're the largest, they've been around the longest, is Oxford House.
mm,
I know some people would say, "Oh, they're bad" or whatever. My experience with Oxford House is incredible, and their model is really good. They handle all the property management. You don't have to do anything. You just get a check, whether there's two people in that house or the house is full. You get the same check every month. It matters none. And I love that because they know that they've been around for 35 years. They have 3,300 houses throughout the United States. They know what the heck they're doing. So they build that in. They build trust in the houses, stay houses for as long as the investor wants to keep the house. Like there's houses that have been Oxford houses for 35 years. I
How does
talked to
that work?
somebody.
Also, do you acquire a house and then reach out to Oxford House and say, hey, I've got a house that I'd like to make into a sober living home? Or is it that you contact them and say, I want to buy a sober living house?
A really good question. So there's a third option, which makes it all more confusing. You bring them a house that's under contract and you get them to go tour that house, right? So that's the third option. The third option is probably the least favorable option because Oxford House is not the quickest moving. They're not going to
Mhm,
like go tour a house and be like, yeah, that's it. We'll sign the lease tomorrow. It has to
mhm,
go through a process. So
mhm,
that wholesale house could disappear in the next
mhm,
hour after they go see it,
mhm.
which is kind of unfortunate, right? So it sucks. If you currently own a house and it's 4 bedroom, two baths, 2,000 square feet and larger, and most of the time is near public transportation. I know not all cities have great public transportation, but most importantly, they're near jobs, like not super high end tech jobs, but middle to lower end jobs where people that are just coming out of rehab can get. That's going to be a plus. HOAs, sometimes you can't get away from them, but they prefer without. Again, some cities, states, their HOAs are everywhere. All depends on the covenants. And Oxford House does have a full time lawyer that will fight for the rights of the occupants. If an HOA, after 5 years, the HOA is like, oh, we want you out because of our covenants. Guess what? Federal law dictates and states that they are allowed to be there. And the reason that law exists is because Oxford House has been to the Supreme Court. That case law is written around them. So that's the other reason why I love them. They are protected. Oxford House will fight for them, but they aren't going to put them in harm's way, right? If the covenants are
Right.
like, gosh, like, no, we're just not going to do it. We're going to say no. So to answer your question, you could find a wholesale deal. You can make the connection, see if Oxford wants it. You could buy a house with the idea of using it as a long-term rental, short-term rental, whatever. You're just going to buy the house and you're like, I'm going to do one of these three exit strategies. Then contact Oxford, see if it makes sense for them. Or if you already own the house and you got a long-term tenant or a short-term rental, contact Oxford House, have them look at it.
Okay. How long do they typically take to turn around? So like if you have a 40-day, 45-day escrow period, for example.
So it's like if they've already come in toward the house and said yes, we love this house. Is that your
Hmm.
like is that the starting
Yeah,
point of your time
yeah.
frame? If they've already said yes and everything's been qualified, they're ready. They're going to move in as soon as possible. The caveat is not with all Oxfords, but with most of them, they want some grace period for their tenants because these people are like literally coming right out of rehab.
Hmm.
They got nothing, like
Hmm.
nothing. They have to go get a job. So and this house has to get filled if it's a
Right.
brand new house. They would love 45 days free. Does it always happen? No. So there's this like give or take
Yeah.
of like, okay, awesome. They do pay more in most cases, and they do sign 2-year leases.
Kelly, the last time I spoke with them, and it's been like 2 years. So I was looking again in Colorado Springs, and Bill, correct me if I'm wrong. So there's the houses are called chapters, and then chapters are part of a region, and then the region is part of the state, and it's a bureaucracy like that. The I was talking to a chapter. Um, Actually, he was regional for Colorado Springs, and he actually lived in a chapter house. So I was talking with him, and he's like, "No, we're tapped out in Colorado Springs. We don't have a whole lot of need right now. However, let me talk to the regional manager on the Western Slope near Grand Junction. And if you guys are not from Colorado, I'm speaking Spanish to you guys, but it's 2 days later, he gets back a hold of me, and he's like, "Hey, if you can find me these parameters for a house in one of these 3 cities, we can fill it within the next 60 days." Um, so they do have their networks. They do tell you exactly where they need houses because that's what they're doing as a nonprofit is the guys that are part of the organization are in the organization. They are recovering. And it is incumbent on whoever is in charge of that chapter house to make sure that there's no um oh boy, what's the word where you relapse of anybody because they will shut down that entire chapter house and kick everybody out. So they kind of police themselves up, and I mean they seriously want to help and make sure that everybody remains clean and set up as many houses as possible.
Mm. Yeah, I'm really interested in this.
John, can I share my screen?
Yeah, let me
Can I
how
do
do I
it?
do this?
Oh, I could do it. You don't even need to give me permission. Cool. I'm
I
going to
don't
give
know if that's a
everybody the
good thing or
cheat
bad
sheet.
thing, but anyway.
Less management. Um, I'm going to give everybody the cheat sheet here of how to get in touch with Oxford House. Is that okay?
Yeah, I was just
Absolutely.
Googling.
Yeah.
I was just Googling it, so.
Okay, so yeah, there's the Google way, and then there's the Bill took a lot of time to figure out how to properly do this way. I'm gonna put into the meeting group chat the link for oxfordvacancies.com. This is where all the magic comes from. Does everybody see that?
Hmm.
Okay. So I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to show you how you can connect with everyone. And you can find out if they're in your area because they're not in every area. They are in a lot of places. So can you see my screen? Okay. So what you're going to do is you're going to go to this little ticker box and you're going to tick it. And then it's going to take you to a map. Here's where all the love is, right here. So
Wow.
you can see every house that they have. Got one over here, 26 in Hawaii, and they do have them in. Oh, there's some in Alaska. Yeah, they are in a few other countries, but maybe they're not on here. So selfishly, we're going to look at Colorado, guys. And I just spoke with Oxford of the northern half of Colorado a few days ago, they are in desperate need of houses. Desperate need. We could open 5 houses on northern in Denver and the western slope in 2 months. We just got to get the houses. So let's just go to, where are we? Let's go over here. This is where Colorado Springs is, everybody, if you didn't know. I also live here. So you can literally see, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, what is the blue dots versus the red dots
Men's
mean?
and women's.
Oh, okay.
So now you see every house that they have. You could also go on Google Maps and like you could go on Google on your phone, type in maps and type in Oxford House, and it'll show all the ones in your city because that's all this is. And like John said, I think of Oxford House, they're not a franchise, but I think of them as little tiny McDonald's, right? So you got a McDonald's on every corner. You don't even know these things exist though. So here's all the houses. If you're trying to find who is your local Oxford House representative, all you do is you start clicking here. You grab the contact number's phone number and you just text them. Hey, my name is Bill W. I have a house in Colorado Springs. I'm an investor in Colorado Springs. Who do I need to talk to about opening up an Oxford House? Literally, that's the question you need. That's the only thing you need to say to them. Do this for like 10 or 15 houses in your area, and they will almost all get back to you with similar answers. Some will give you the contact, some will say, hey, I passed your contact information along. Either way, you're going to get their information and you'll be able to get in contact with somebody within a week. Absolutely. This is my secret. I used to guard this closely, but now I'm like, that's selfish and stupid because, like John said, I can help 30 people very
Mm-hmm.
easily get off the streets and
Mm-hmm.
get into a loving, caring environment. So why would I hide this from folks?
Yeah,
Yeah, I
there's
love that.
so much work in this space. Bill, with I had a brain buster for you. Um, yeah, dang. I'll try and think of it. It had to deal with occupancies, um,
Okay,
and
I
all
got it. I
that.
got you.
Go
Okay,
ahead.
so Oxford House, right? We're talking about a 4-bedroom house. They're typically going to put 2 people per bedroom. And then there's usually one master bedroom. And I don't know what else to call them, but the house elder will get the master bedroom. They'll get their own bed, their own bathroom. They kind of are the one policing everybody. They have the longest of sobriety time. They know the Oxford House system. So
Mm-hmm.
usually you're going to get 9 people or 7 people in a 4-bedroom house. And they do require you keep a common area. No doubt about that. But they will also say, hey, there's an office. Let's put a door in and make it a bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
Do you
Are
have to
you typically
furnish this?
buying?
Sorry.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. No,
Bill, do you
No,
have to
you do not.
furnish anything?
You don't have to do anything. Not you just give them a house and they do everything for you.
do you typically buy wholesale? Do you buy right off the MLS? How do you typically buy? Do you like buy, renovate, and then refi into like a DSCR?
Great question. And I know you had asked the question, how do you get into Oxford House? And one thing I forgot to mention, Oxford's standard operating procedure is part of their regional team has a one person, sometimes 2, dedicated to acquiring homes. That's all they do. They literally will go on the MLS and they'll search every listing that is on the MLS and they'll take their realtor with them and they'll go look at the house. And they'll say, this house is perfect for us. Then they go to Mr. and Mrs. Investor and say, here's the house. Who wants to buy it for us? So as sub 2 people, we're like, we're not going to go get a conventional loan for this. But that is how they operate. That is the best way to do it, because then they pick out the house and they say, go buy it. And you're like, cool, awesome. But they do, you can send them deals. You can send them your own house. It's just, they're used to operating in a way. So you kind of
Mhm.
sort of break their system when other things happen.
Mhm. But it seems that even if they've found a house and let's just say they come to us, you could still do like a DSCR potentially, and maybe just get like a partner if you don't want to go in with your own money.
You can buy that house any way you want.
Yeah,
They don't care as long as
yeah,
you buy it.
The only problem with DSCRs, you have to find the right one, is they will underwrite it as long-term rental, single
right,
family.
right. Yeah,
So that's the only issue there. You might have to buy a little
right.
bit deep or bring more cash to the table, but
Mm-hmm.
if
It's true.
and it's per area, per region where you get the average, I guess, bed gross income, right, Bill? It's not like standardized or anything.
Yeah, every region's very different. Like in Phoenix, for example, if we talk about the median price range that Oxford likes to buy in, around here, you're talking just the median price range. But in some of the more expensive areas in Arizona, for example, what's the expensive area in?
Like Scottsdale, or I'm in Arizona, and
Yes,
Scottsdale,
in
yeah.
Scottsdale, they will fill $1 million home with 8 bedrooms. They'll put 16 people in there, and there's zero comps for that. So they pay 150, like the ranges I've seen, from the low end to the high end, like Louisville, Kentucky, C grade house, all the way up to Scottsdale. You're talking, $180 a week per person, like per bed.
Mm-hmm.
And then the low ends, you're talking like 125, because they also, they pay rent, but then they have utilities and fees, dues for the house, because the house also has dues because it's a nonprofit. So you really just have to talk with your local representative
Yeah.
and they'll walk you through. And it's even then it's not like cut and dry. But I will say, if there's an existing Oxford house on one street, and you have this property on the same street and the existing house is 2 grand a month, you're not getting 3 grand. Like, that's not gonna
Yeah,
work.
right.
It has to be like relatively close.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
First step, just make calls and contact them and start the conversation.
Yeah. And so, like you said, you're not filling anything. What about, I assume that you are just maintaining the property. You're doing the maintenance, you're doing the CapEx, they're taking care of everything else.
Yes, major mechanicals are the investor's job. If the toilet gets clogged and you can prove, like, hey, before you guys moved in, I flushed the lines, like it's clean, and a week later it's clogged, they're covering it. If the door gets broken, you won't even know about it. It'll just get fixed.
Okay. No, that's awesome. OxfordVacancies.com. Okay. Man, I'm gonna have to reach out to
Yeah,
you. We're gonna have to
I
talk.
got you, John. I got
Yeah.
you.
What other questions are out there? Nathaniel, Kelly with the I.
Come
I'm
on,
just
Nathaniel,
looking at
show
the
your
map right
face.
now. I'm here, man. I was just looking at there's like very little in Georgia, which is, I don't know, a little
Surprising.
surprising.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like Atlanta would have um more than it does, but I don't know, maybe that's
Here's
rumors.
the background on why they're in some places and not others. And I don't really know too much about it. And you start talking about government, and I'm like, "Whoop." But there is, so Oxford House is a nonprofit. They get money from the state. They also get money from the federal government. I believe the reason you're not seeing many houses in Atlanta is due to government funding for the programs. Because again, Oxford is huge. They've been around for a really long time. they go to DC a bunch of times a year. They have their own advocates that work for money. They go to the politicians and say, hey, we need money, give us funding. And like, I forget what they call it, but um, that's what they do. So that's why you're not seeing it in some places, because there's no funding for it. When a new house is opened, Oxford uses their grant money. I think it's $4,000 to open the house. So we talked about how you don't have to furnish it. Each house is its own chapter, and that chapter gets its own bank account, like literally gets its own bank account. Oxford takes $4,000 and dumps it into the bank account. Gives everybody the opportunity to buy the beds, buy the furniture, buy everything they need to get that house set up. That money has to be repaid by the house. So it's a loan from Oxford to the house. The house pays it back. That money goes back into the coffers to open up another house. So without the government funding, those grants, it becomes really difficult to open up new houses. And, that's basically the extent of what I know.
So when you're weird question. So when you're looking at a property, or you have a property that you have a possibility of and stuff, and you want to do something with it, like a co-living situation, do you guys have like a formula or a way that you figure out like co-living would be best for this, or a sober living, or a VA facility, place for vets? Or is there a way that you guys work it to figure out which one would fit the box better in like that area?
So, the first thing I look at is bed count. And like one of the traditional metrics is the higher the bed count, the better. Typically around 8 is when I start to get nervous. And then I like to look at, for every 3 occupants, there needs to be a bathroom. When it comes to like second tier type of information, I look at parking, because when it comes to like co-living and like racking and stacking, yes, having like bus lines and all that close can be really beneficial. But gonna assume that everybody has their own car, and just to have that parking available and not in front of another neighbor's house, or in such a way that it's like right in front of like their windows, like a side yard where there's a fence. Like I can count that across the street. Sometimes you have that type of situation, because not only are you balancing inside of the house, you also don't want to, piss off the neighbors. And now I've heard stories of like neighbors angry at the co-living house and like smashing in windows, dropping nails in front of tires, just like crazy things that people do when they're mad about their situation. And then when it comes to the actual money piece, I look at if it's a master bedroom or like a junior suite with its own bath. I look at 1 bed, 1 bath averages for that neighborhood or that zip code, tops, kind of like how you would normally comp it. And then I look at studio apartment averages for the non kind of suite rooms. And that gives me a relative good number to work off of. I also go into Facebook groups for roommates, for house hacking, anything with those like buzzwords. And people tell you, hey, I can afford $600. I'm looking for a room for no more than, $700 per month, utilities included. And that can give you an idea of, okay, this area, this is what people are looking for. And then just playing around, seeing kind of like that normal property management thing where you set the price and it's not sticking, you lower it a little bit and you start to get, more returns. But knowing full well what kind of um, service you want to offer. And to your point, when you're looking at like veterans, reach out to those veteran organizations. In Colorado, it's Mount Carmel. There's also just straight VA, and they might have good assets for you to reach out to. And I heard a really good midterm rental kind of way of thinking. And that's when you're not reaching out to the individual, you're reaching out to the organizations, just like Oxford House, just like these veteran care nonprofits. And those are the individuals that have a whole pool of people just waiting, right? So, in that regard, like nurses, you don't talk to each nurse, maybe not the hospital, but there's nurse placement uh, organizations that get them the job. And if you can provide housing for those agencies, that just makes the agency look better for their clients. So in that same kind of like mindset, reaching out to the people who have the most reach into these different segments of society. So also in Colorado Springs, I'm reaching out to crisis pregnancy centers. I know there's one that has at one time there's 10 ladies who are going through their program of preparing them as single moms and everything. And then after a year being in the program, they're going to need their own place. They're going to need somewhere safe and clean to actually raise their baby as a single mom. So I'm not going to each one of those individuals. I'm going to that gatekeeper and building relationships. And I
So
think
you're
that's,
putting
go ahead.
single new moms with their babies in all in a house together.
Correct. And then like the moms, they have the ability to, I don't want to say commiserate, but it's, the same mindset
Yeah,
where it's
no,
like,
I get
hey,
it. I think
I'm
it's
going through this thing and I see you're
huge
going
need for
through it
that.
too. Yeah. Yeah. Just support structure. And like that, I knew this answer 14
Takes a
years
village,
ago.
right? It takes a village.
Exactly. And I knew this answer 14 years ago. And I fought it. And I was like, I'm going to be a wholesaler. I'm going to be a connector. I'm going to do all this other stuff. But my sister needed a place for her and her two kids. And I was like, well, I'm getting deployed like, I am now. And it's like, I got 2 bedrooms in my basement that's open. Mom will be in the house too, because I also took my mom in. And so that's all she needed. And now she owns a couple of places herself. She owns a couple of cars. She was the grant writer for different welfare programs for the state of Colorado. So all she needed was a safe, stable platform. And I knew that. And, creating that like person to person connection, it takes forever. But who are, the people who there's a big fuzzball, who are the people reaching out to? And it's kind of yeah. Yeah, it's better for you, frankly, to reach out to these individuals because you're doing less time networking with people who just might be like, I went with the cheaper option across the street.
Well, I like creating more of that themed house and really addressing a need as opposed and also saving the fees from the pad split model.
Hmm.
I'm just thinking about like I'm in Arizona, so I'm thinking about Tucson, for example, where the cost of entry is a little bit lower. So I'm just, yeah, at any rate, love these
Yeah.
ideas.
No, and that's yeah, there's like so many different avenues to go down because it's
Mhm.
like, okay, single family is single family. Multifamily is like I think you can open more doors with multifamily, but when it comes to like the idea of co-living, sober living is co-living. Um, what is that? The ASL, the assisted residential assisted living.
Mhm.
That's co-living. Like there's so many different ways to actually slice it and to serve different segments of society.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and definitely the themed houses. For example, residential assisted living. You got to start targeting those the ranches where you can put additional bedrooms, but they might have 4, 5, 6 bedrooms just on the ground floor. Why? I'm hitting 40 years old this year and I don't want to walk up and downstairs. I can imagine in 30
Yeah.
years.
Oh yeah, for
So
sure.
yeah, it's you definitely have to tailor it and then how you run your house and who you're reaching out to is, the same aspect of your vibe attracts your tribe.
Hmm.
Your product is going to attract what you want.
Yeah. And so there's like like if you called the veterans administration you could call. They could probably help in terms of placing, yeah.
Yep,
Residents, okay.
absolutely. And VA hospitals, you would probably have to like sift through a bunch of like bureaucratic offices to find the one that is like helping with housing.
Yeah.
Um, and I actually was talking with a lady. She was like an insurance adjuster, and then she started to get into real estate. Unfortunately, I couldn't work with her because she was just doing arbitrage at one point. But she was finding houses for outpatients that had to go to hospitals. So instead of like the house across the street being for nurses, it was actually for outpatient care. And so the
Mhm.
nurses can like do a house visit just across the street from the hospital and do all of that. And you can put several people in there too. So, there's tons of stuff for healthcare, tons of stuff for like vets and all of that stuff. So, but the other thing is, I find people are so appreciative when you actually give them a product that meets their needs. I
Yeah,
have no problems in my houses, and they're extremely thankful each and every day
yeah.
that I talk to them. So,
I'd love to see how you and Bill, you as well, how you're underwriting. I mean, I've got some sheets and stuff that I can use for underwriting co-living, but I'm just curious how you're initially thinking about it.
Bill, you want to take that one first?
Sure. So, I mean, for me, it just comes down to like with Oxford House, it's what's how much are they going to be able to give me per
Hmm.
month? How much is the house going to pull in? Because Oxford will say, we'll pay you $2,400 a month every month for 2 years, and then we can renew our contract and you can increase the price by $200. So it's just a long-term rental on steroids because you're not contracting. It's not the members, it's the house. You have a
Right,
contract with the house.
right.
So if there's two people in that house, it doesn't matter because like John mentioned earlier, there's the house and then there's the larger region and then there's the larger region than
Hmm.
that and then it goes to federal. So if this house isn't performing, there's a pool of money that the other houses can support.
Hmm.
So it's
Right, that
just
makes sense. So
just writing it like a
are
long-term
you
rental.
cash flowing on them then? If, because 2,400 doesn't sound very high.
I mean, if your rent is if no, if your mortgage is $1,800, then like that's great.
Right. So maybe like a few $100, but then you just scale.
Yeah, I would consider to the idea that with Oxford House, it's like, yes, it will make you money in the short term. And if you talk to Oxford, they'll say the same thing to you. They'll say this is not your short term get rich idea. This is
Right.
having a same tenant in there for 25 years. Like I
Yeah,
literally was on the
totally.
phone with the lady yesterday. She's selling her Oxford House. It's been in Oxford House for 20 years. And the lady that owns it, she's moving on. She needs to sell her house, and she's just been dealing with Oxford for 20 years. Like, and to me, that's just like, what do you do? Talk to them
Well,
whenever
especially
you
if you
want
don't want
about
to have a
whatever.
headache. Yeah, that seems like the ideal tenant. Yeah, I love that.
Right. So the first year or two, you might be like break even or a couple hundred
Yeah,
bucks, but 10 years from now, you're never going to remember you own an Oxford house because you're just going
yeah.
to be like, oh, there's a house over there that pays for itself now, and I make.
So are you buying with any of your own money or are you trying to do wholesale? Like how are you buying,
Me,
if you don't mind me
currently, I
asking?
have no, it's a great question. So I actually, when I got into real estate, my this was 2.5 years ago. I had no intentions of buying property. It was how can I make a living doing real estate, whatever way that turned out to be.
Right.
So I never had any money, and it wasn't the idea in the beginning. It was just like, hey, I want to help give back to folks that were in a similar position that I was.
Hmm.
So I made the contacts, and people were like, "Bill, I've got a house in Texas. I got a good friend, Justin Hertz. He had an Airbnb, this beautiful Airbnb house, and it was, murals on the wall and everything. And it just was like a headache for him. He was like, you know what, Bill? I heard you work with sober living. Help me get them in there. And I did. I got them into this house, and it's like the best house on the block, like for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a bunch of people in recovery living in an incredible house. And that was something else I wanted to bring up. They aren't going to move into a C class neighborhood. They're going to move into B plus, like 100%, because you are what you are surrounded by. And in order for
Mm-hmm.
these folks to have something they could never have imagined as for
Mm-hmm.
housing, that will send them on a trajectory that's going to change their lives.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
100%.
I don't own any houses that are Oxford. I've simply helped other people turn their existing homes into Oxford houses.
Okay.
The goal is to own them, but for me, I need the right partners in place
Right.
because they're difficult to put in if you're just like, hey, Oxford, here's a wholesale deal. Like, I've literally
Yeah.
tried that hundreds of times. It's a pain in the butt. The best way is, hey, you either own the house and you send them your house and say it's going to be vacant in a month, or you simply go to them and you just either have the money for 10, 15, 25% down, or you have partners that they're into that. They're like, I love Oxford. I like the model. I want to set it and forget it, make them a partner and go a long way. So it's really finding the right people that are
Yeah.
for what you're doing, not just like, whatever their preferred exit strategy. So some people just want to make the money, and that's okay. That's totally
Mm-hmm.
cool. But other
Mm-hmm.
people want to put their money someplace safe for a really long time
Mm-hmm.
that is also going to help people. And that's what I've been looking for.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, you said something that um I dealt with, and it's not Oxford House. It's actually another investor who's getting started building these relationships. And it takes a long time to build relationships locally with these nonprofits that aren't nationalized, like um, crisis pregnancy centers that are very localized, or churches even, because they need to trust you. They need to know that you are there to do what is best for them. And I ran into one guy. Actually, I was just talking about, hey, yeah, I'm moving out of my house. I'm going to turn it into a rental. And another sub two student in Colorado Springs, he got a hold of this guy that was just building relationships that wanted to do like arbitrage for these nonprofits. And I'm getting, he's paying me 3,000 a month, and my mortgage is only 2,000 a month. Um, and he is managing all the relationships. He is the one that is doing all the tenant facing stuff. So there's onesie twosies out there that aren't necessarily attached to Oxford House that is also kind of doing the same thing. And I'm sure he's making like 4,200, because that's what I was guessing I would make if I was to do kind of what he was doing. Um, but giving him $1,000 a month to deal with placement, to deal with all of the management. I even have him on single net lease, so he has to take care of all the maintenance. So that's a possibility as well. And like with the house that I have that I'm self-managing, I wanted to go down this road. I wanted to do it myself. Um, and if I put a property manager in there, I would probably only get a fraction of what I am actually getting. Um, and I even have a partner involved, a PML. So, um, yeah, this asset class is very forgiving. Um, I started with a 3 bedroom, 1.5 bath, and now the most recent one that I picked up, I turned it from that to a 4 bedroom, 1 and 3/4 bath, and it's cash flowing $1,000 a month. And these people are so thankful that I'm giving them affordable housing, because these are young
Yeah.
professionals that they would be spending at least twice as what I'm charging them. And they have high speed internet, fully furnished common
Yeah.
areas. The backyard has unobstructed views of the mountains and everything. And it's nice, clean, safe that, they're like, man, I just need to save money and, get myself
Yeah.
uh, out of the situation I'm in. So, yeah, it's so many different ways to slice it.
Yeah, I love this. I definitely want to double down. I like the ideas of just reaching out to the local nonprofits and the pregnancy centers and yeah.
Hmm. Thomas, you've been lurking in the background for a little bit now.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Let me turn my camera on here in just a second. My big question, I think, is my business partner and I are getting ready to enter the space, and we primarily focus on long-term cash flowing rentals here in the Ohio market, specifically Cleveland to Toledo. Um, Cleveland is just now getting going for pad split, as is Columbus. So I guess we're a little averse at taking this on ourselves because we're not necessarily the type of investors that want to run the property management ourselves. So my big question is this: we have a portfolio that we're looking at right now at purchasing in Lorain, which is kind of in the middle of the two. It's like a suburb of Cleveland, kind of, and the portfolio has a lot of four bedroom, one baths. They were older homes, 1900s, early 1900s, but they have been renovated. I'm going to say late 90s, early 2000s. Not like full flips, more like quality rental flips. Um, Not like a standard rental flip. It was decent quality rental flips back when they did them. Um, but we're trying to figure out if it's going to be worth it for us to start this avenue with this portfolio where it's got a bunch of four bedroom, one baths, or if we should just maybe uh, start off with something that is just specifically designed and purchased for co living.
Um, my first inkling is that the one bedroom could be problematic. And
One bathroom.
I'm sorry, yes, one bathroom.
One bathroom. That was my thought too. That was one of my concerns.
Yeah, because you got four bedrooms. I like to stick to 3 to 1. Um, but even just having one bathroom in a house and not even a half bath, uh, I don't know. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the shower is, needed, but it's frankly it's that toilet that
Yep.
people use more so than the shower. So, what? No, no. I was thinking because like in my market we have bi-levels and they're 4 bedroom, 1.5 at least, usually
Mm-hmm.
1 3/4. And because they're bi-levels, typically there's 2 bedrooms up top, two on the bottom. And so that's perfect with a little living room involved. And so I can
Yep.
stick a single mom and her kids up top, single mom and her kids in the basement. They have their own living rooms. They just have to share like the backyard, the garage, the laundry room, and kitchen. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, one bathroom can definitely be problematic.
That's kind of my thought too. And the problem I think that you encounter quite often across Ohio is the age of the homes and the overall design of them. A lot of these homes weren't even originally built before bathrooms and indoor plumbing existed. So like full size showers is not even a thing in a lot of homes in Ohio, right? Where like standard 6 foot height doesn't even exist in some of the showers. So that being said, like the option to add more bedrooms and bathrooms easily in like say an attached garage isn't really a thing in this community unless you're like in the burbs with the new houses. Um, and so, yeah, that's kind of, we're trying to figure out the best approach here in this market because it is unique. There's a huge need and a demand for it. The wages are extremely low here in the Midwest. So where rents are going up, 3 bedroom rent here is average 1,400 for a Section 8 rent. And so there's definitely a need considering that the wages here are pretty stagnant in the economy, but just trying to find the best way to enter the co-living space uh, without necessarily having to go into the burbs and purchase the houses that are 300,000 because at that point the rent is harder to check here because you can't necessarily charge a higher rent like you can in say Arizona or something. Even in the burbs here it's just a little harder, so that's trying to figure out our best entry into this market is kind of my problem.
Yeah, yeah, I caution people buying any house for co-living, just any house for co-living, because you definitely do have to be choosy.
Mm-hmm.
And so even though these houses might not work for co-living, like the house I just bought and turned into co-living, like luckily it worked out. What I wanted to do was wrap it to a struggling family that couldn't afford to bring the cash that I had to bring down,
Mm-hmm.
or that couldn't afford like a loan. And like I could put a DSCR loan on this pretty easily. So like that could be a possibility just in the affordable housing aspect, not necessarily the co-living
Mm-hmm.
aspect, where you are the one using your credentials, your credit to actually get these assets, and then getting people on there on wraps, contracts for deed, and still helping people at the end of the day. And you know what? If you look around universities, people, thanks to bigger pockets, they know about house hacking. People have been doing it forever anyways. There's just, a household name to it now. And so like roommate situation, and you can like
Mm-hmm.
talk to these individuals in that regard. Like, no, all of you guys can buy this house from me, no banks, that type of situation. So
All right. Well, hey, thanks for the advice. I appreciate it. Yeah, we're in a unique market and just trying to figure out how we're going to get going is kind of our starting point. So I appreciate the feedback and advice for sure.
yeah, and
Thomas,
kind of go ahead, Bill.
I would look also at veteran housing. This is
Mm-hmm.
something pretty new to me, but it really opened up my eyes because the funding for veteran housing is expansive. And we kind of went back on something that John had mentioned, how there is not just like internal support within the veterans themselves, but there's a lot of external support. And what I found interesting here in the Springs is that a house like yours, a 4-1, right? For example. Yeah, that's like
Mm-hmm.
not a normal house, like except for the older, houses built in the 1900s. Like I totally understand that. But there are veterans that are looking for those houses, and these nonprofits will assist. Like the one program, for example, would pay up to half of their rent for 2 years.
Mm.
Other part of this program was helping veterans who have done bad things, right? They still need houses. Some of them may have families as well, and they're
Mm-hmm.
much harder to house because they have bad credit. They have like they went to jail. They've got a background, but they are willing to pay more money to house these people. When I
Mm.
went there, this is the literal words that the organization told me. The grants that the government gives these nonprofits allow for the nonprofits to basically bribe the people who own the houses. So like somebody that is a convicted felon, they can literally, these nonprofits could give you like 4 grand to just go on vacation, do whatever the heck you want, in order for you to house that convicted felon who's
Hmm.
also a veteran. And I was
Interesting.
like, so there are these subpopulations that are exponentially harder to house because they don't meet all the standard background checks. But what is really fun is because this nonprofit is basically the buffer between you and them, doesn't even matter, because the nonprofit's there to support them and you. So if they're not paying their bills, the nonprofit has more and other resources to ensure that you're also getting paid. So
Hmm.
look at those options. They're out there. I was shocked. I was like, okay, this is wild. But it makes sense. Somebody that has a felony for domestic violence or some other sexual assault,
Mm-hmm.
they also need housing. And I was like, okay, here comes the morals. Like, what do we do here? I don't know. But folks need houses. So interesting facts.
Yeah, really appreciate you sharing that information. That's fascinating. Absolutely. Would you guys be okay if I reached out to you just direct, like through Facebook or something, in the future with some questions?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
My calendar is in the chat, and it's also right here. Just go to that
Sweet.
URL, and that's my calendar link.
Awesome. Love it. Thank you.
Yeah. And before I forget, I wanted to hit up on like tenants in general. And I forget the gentleman who was on here a couple of weeks ago. He's down in Texas, and you are putting more people inside of these houses, which, yes, build in your conflict resolution type of systems, but remember, like, you're quintupling the amount of headaches that could potentially be on your table, because you're not just managing one family per house. Now you're managing five. And like, I use Rent Ready. So each house, each room has all of that. So you're just paying attention to it more. There is more for the actual management. And depending on your market, depending on, I'm a social psychology major, so I pay attention to like environments and heuristics in those environments. And so in this area, I think it was outside of Dallas, he was just having the worst trouble. He would do excellent tenant screening. He would get on the phone with them. He would meet them in person. He would then walk them through. He had a solid lease agreement, and they're just horrible tenants. He walked them through, and now a whole house is underperforming because people are moving out because of this tenant is yelling at people, mistreating people, just disrespecting folks. And, there is the dark side of the entire thing too, which, to Bill's point, definitely getting some, I guess, master leasing, you could call it master leasing your property and doing it that way. It
Yeah.
has its benefits. But
Gotta
folks,
jump.
I don't want to keep, go ahead, Kelly.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say I've got to jump, but I really appreciate all of this. It's been super enlightening and inspiring because I love the idea of co-living and for these specific communities and specifically sober living as well. So thank you. Thank you. And I like this small group. It's nice to get to know people a little bit better than some of these humongous Zooms where you don't really get to connect. So thank you for hosting.
Oh, no problem. And that's, I learn each and every time I have these, and it's like new people, every other
Mhm.
week. I've been jumping it a little bit, trying to find what works for folks. I know I'm 6 hours ahead of East Coast right now. So I'm also trying not to stay up all night.
Oh,
So,
wow. Yeah, it's late.
yeah, well, this is when I
Yeah.
normally do real estate, is after I put the
Yeah.
kids to bed. So,
Right,
uh,
right.
I'm fine with that. But no, not next weekend, but the weekend after, just so, we don't get tired of it. And I mean, there's a lot to talk about, and there's a lot of tips and
Yeah,
tricks, but it's kind of wash, rinse,
yeah,
repeat type of, that type of stuff.
totally.
And I want to keep it fresh. And yeah,
There's only so much you can digest at one time.
exactly. No, and it's awesome. But thanks, folks, so much. I hope to see you in
Thank
2 weeks.
you.
Quick question.
Bye-bye.
Yeah,
Quick
go ahead,
question.
Kelly.
Is there a possibility we could get a copy of this recording? My business partner wasn't able to join us today.
Yes. I need to put it on YouTube, because
Okay.
my Zoom cloud is just getting overwhelmed with these, 2 hour long Zoom. So yeah,
Okay, that's cool.
I've been meaning to do it. Just got to find the time.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, if you just let me know, maybe once you get it loaded, I'll even go look on your page, and I think I might be subscribed to you, but I'll double check.
Oh, I don't publish anything. I'm
Oh,
like
okay.
super embarrassed with like the mindset thing. I just need to put myself out there, frankly, and just
Okay.
actually publish for people to search for it. So
Okay.
I'll do it. You know what? I'm gonna do it because you wanted me to.
Okay, that'd be great.
Absolutely.
Kelly, hold him accountable. Make sure you write down his phone number and text him in a week.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
just blast it all over the group.
Okay.
Yep, John didn't do what he said he was going to do.
He promised. Yeah,
He
I have
promised
to.
to tell us.
Yeah,
All right.
everybody's asking for it. I have to. It'll probably take a couple of hours for it to actually spin through. I'll work on it this weekend. I will.
Okay, perfect. I
All
appreciate
right.
that. Thank you guys very much.
All right. Catch
See
you
ya.
next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.